If you familiarized yourself with Half-Life's lore, you probably know about Race X, the main antagonists of Half-Life Opposing Force. Now, this expansion is developed by Gearbox, and because of that, Valve will probably never pick up Race X again, but that doesn't mean we can't theorize about what they were. On their own, they were really just supposed to be what the Combine ultimately became, the threat that the Nihilith was originally running from, just another alien species. But I'd like to put the already small amount of pre-established lore aside here for this theory, so with that being said, let's find out why these two aliens are the same. So, what do I mean when I say that the Vortigaunt and the Shock Trooper are the same? While they are definitely similar to each other game design-wise, they are still very distinct aliens. Well, to explain this, we first have to understand the two primary subject matters of Half-Life's story: portals and alternate dimensions. For one, we know that Zen is considered to be the fabric between realities. However, we would of course presume that there are an infinite amount of these realities. Now, I'm no Gordon Freeman, I don't have a PhD in theoretical physics, however, I think it would be safe to assume that Zen itself is not an exception to being subject to having an infinite amount of iterations. In the same way that there are countless different realities, I would assume that there are countless different variations of Zen that connect many of those realities. Now, allow me to paint a visual image for you. There's a foreign alien threat that can effectively use portal technology. This threat takes advantage of a vulnerability in humanity's portal technology and uses that advantage to attempt to force its way into Earth to carry out their plans for Earth with disregard to human life. Their forces primarily consist of medium infantry units, heavy units that do the heavy lifting, and massive aliens that can devastate entire groups of humans at once. The aliens are close to achieving their goals, but are stopped by a young protagonist in their 20s who happens to be the right man in the wrong place. Sound familiar? Now, with this information, the following is my theory. I would assert that Race X and the Zen armies are parallel versions of each other. That is to say that the Shock Trooper is in truth a Vortigaunt that went through a different evolutionary history, and vice versa. When we look at these organisms, the similarities line up. They both have different evolutionary features that would have come about by many of the same reasons due to natural selection, assuming that they aren't just synthetic. If we look at their leg and foot structure, we clearly see that they are both digitigrade with similarly shaped feet. Additionally, they both needed at some point to develop extra arms for, again, similar reasons. The Vortigaunts have them for combat abilities with the Vortessence, and the Shock Troopers have them for combat abilities as well to hold the shock roaches. Another similarity that we see is with the Houndai and the Pit Drone. While much farther apart, I would still argue that these two are still in some way related. This is primarily because of the posture that they have and their primary feature, the plethora of holes at the front of their face. I would presume that when these two diverged, it was in a situation where either vigilance or combat ability would have benefited the continuation of their species. The Houndai evolved the holes on its head for the primary purpose of vigilance, being able to see everything, which I presume then led to it becoming the cowardly, dog-like thing we see today. As for the Pit Drone, on the other hand, I believe that the holes in its head adapted to become a kind of horn or spike for ramming into its opponents, which later down the line led to it having evolved the ability to launch these at its foes. The final similarity I would like to point out is that the Gene Worm's tentacles look suspiciously similar to the Zen tentacle. They even have a similar mouth structure, being a kind of proboscis. This makes me think that, rather than the species of the Nihilith becoming dominant, it was the Gene Worm species, at some point diverging from the Zen tentacle. This was actually the idea that made me have the idea for this video in the first place. Now, it's important to remember that these are just theories, and they're more than likely wrong, but I do find it interesting that the developers drew these parallels to the original Zen species in the first place. If I were to think of an alternative reason as to why they did this, I would assume it's because Race X were meant to be the force that the Nihilith was running from. Maybe these are supposed to be upgraded versions of Zen creatures to show that they are superior, but again, it's all speculation. So, thank you everyone for watching this video. This was just a small concept I had while working on my next big video, but I would still love to hear your input on just what Race X even is. So with that out of the way, thanks for watching, and goodbye.